raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
It's weird because it's really not even, it's one of these shows where you really can't even plan something like this, to have all of this in the news, especially, when we book some of these guests, several days out, and yet here we are. And what I mean by that is, on the program today, we're going to be talking with Dr. Bruce Hartman coming up at the bottom of this hour. We've had him on before. He's the author of a book called Your Faith Has Made You Well, A Radical New Way to Create Peace and Hope. But specifically, I was going to have him on to talk about the fact that you had 100 students at an Oregon high school who walked out of classes last week in support of the LGBTQ RSTLNE, would you like to buy a Val community, after they decided that they weren't safe. They didn't feel safe because there was a Chick-fil-A food truck at their home football games on Friday nights. So because there was their home football game with the Chick-fil-A truck, they didn't feel safe. They thought it was anti-LGBT RSTLNE, would you like? That's what we were going to talk about. And instead, the conversation has shifted in less than a week because the news is very fluid. And what we have here is a situation where Chick-fil-A has decided that they no longer want to give to the current charities that they're giving to now. They want to give to charities that focus on homelessness and hunger. They're going to give to charities that focus on homelessness and hunger. So which charities are they going to cease giving to? Charities that focus on homelessness and hunger, like the Fellowship of Christian Athletes and the Salvation Army. There is no way to get around this. They're doing this to appease the mob. Because the LGBTQ RSTLNE, would you like to buy a Val community, love Chick-fil-A chicken sandwiches, just like everybody else. Chick-fil-A is chasing a profit motive here. Wouldn't be the first time an American company has done it. But it does kind of feel strange when millions of Americans flocked to defend Chick-fil-A in their lawsuit. It kind of blurs together. The Hobby Lobby situation. Remember Hobby Lobby? Millions of Americans supported Hobby Lobby, saying, under Obamacare, we do not believe we should have to provide certain types of health care that can cause abortions, like birth control and Plan B and things like that. They won their lawsuit, by the way. They went to the Supreme Court, if memory serves correct. Then you have Chick-fil-A, whose CEO defended traditional marriage on national television, and everyone lost their minds on the left, on the LGBT RSTLNE, would you like to buy a Val community? Everybody in there. And here we are today. They've decided to do away with supporting charities because those charities are Christian. It feels very odd, doesn't it? Very strange times that we're living in. So that's the first thing. All right. So we're going to be talking to Dr. Hartman about these developments. But then at the bottom of the next hour, we've got Arkansas's Family Counsel, Ken Yang. He's back on the program, okay? Now, let me see if I can't find the article. Here it is. And it just so happens that we had planned to talk about this. Headline, LGBT group pushes for more gay television characters. Okay, this was posted a couple of days ago on Family Counsel's website. familycouncil.org. There is that the pro LGBT RSTLNE Would You Like to Buy Val community group GLAD, which again is more acronyms. The GLAAD RSTLNE Would You Like to Buy Val community. They're now wanting 20% of all characters on all television shows to be LGBT RSTLNE Would You Like to Buy Val community by 2025. So I'm going to talk to Ken about that. I'm just letting you know this is just something that's already been planned, and it's kind of hot right now in terms of it's in the news. A lot of people are talking about this. A lot of people are talking about this. Now, you see our board for the rest of the week is a photo of the governor behind a Chinese flag with the title, Nothing to See Here. That's because Conduit News is officially, and we've been this for a while, but now that the Arkansas Times seems to have dropped this, there was a slight mention of it, to be fair. Max Brantley mentioned a little bit of this in his critique of the Republicans gloating over the Democrats being inept, and they're not going to have a Senate candidate to run against Tom Cotton. To be fair, when he was listing all of the corrupt Republicans at the very end, meaning the ones that have gone to jail, he's pointing out that the Republicans, said it would be different, and yet there's all these Republicans that are in jail. He's trying to link Tom Cotton with all of that because he's Max Brantley and it's the Arkansas Times. But he did mention Asa the Third and Asa the governor going to China, being in China together, and the fact that he's got Chinese money into his law firm, the same Chinese communist entities on the law firm that have received taxpayer money. So he did mention it yesterday, just barely, briefly at the very end of his piece. But for the most part, I think we can say that Conduit News is the lone voice in the wilderness right now. Conduit is in the wilderness, the lone voice, and we are asking questions the mainstream media refuses to ask. We are writing stories. We are doing radio segments the mainstream media refuses to do. And so there's nothing to see here. I mean, if you can take it with a grain of salt, you can look at the reporting that I've done. You can look at the reporting at conduitforaction.org. Is there nothing to see here? Are we really supposed to believe that the, quote, state, end quote, newspaper believes? I mean, they've gotten this. They know about this information. 100% they know about it. I've had it confirmed from multiple people in government who've called the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. That's right. There are people who are in government who have called the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette asking them, hey, are you guys going to do a story on this? And from what I can tell, most people have now told me that they feel like they're just getting the runaround, that they're just being placated or patronized and lied to, essentially. So we will not believe that the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, Arkansas Business, and the rest of them don't know about this reporting. They do. And so, given that, are we supposed to believe that they believe there's nothing to this story? There's nothing to see here, that they're not doing, like that reporting the story would be doing their readers harm or injustice? Because clearly, this is about public confidence and trust in our own government. And here's another question. Why in the world has the Arkansas Democratic Party remained silent about this entire thing? I haven't seen a tweet from Democrats who are outraged by the governor's son profiting, at the very least, it's the governor's son profiting off of his dad's political connections in Arkansas economic development. And then it's actually much worse than that, because this is the governor's law firm that we don't really know if he's not counsel for that law firm. We don't know when that changed. Did it change when he was in office? You would think a smart guy like Asa, who's been around, is smart enough to know, okay, I'm elected governor, I'm going to step away from the Asa Hutchinson law firm, an international law firm. Okay, my son's going to take it over, but the fact is he's still listed as owner, and the fact is when he leaves office, he stands to walk in to either he's going to continue to practice law there, or he's going to have some ownership stake to where he's going to get, I don't know, put money away in escrow or whatever you do, but you're gonna have some financial interest, and this thing is going to have grown because of your work as governor. On behalf of the people of Arkansas, do you guys understand why the acronym Aristocrats Serving Arkansas continues to this day to be so apropos? It's because you got to make a living, right? And we're giving the people of Arkansas jobs. Really, are we? How many of these jobs are actually going to be held by Chinese nationals who have now used the governor's law firm via his son to secure the proper visa and international paperwork to come here and immigrate here? Hashtag immigration. You go look at Asa the Third's tweets. Hashtag immigration. I mean, even if you were to explain this to me in a way that I'm still thinking, well, hang on a second. Is that really serving the people of Arkansas, or is it serving yourself? I mean, when I think about jobs coming to Arkansas and you know, what they have always wanted you to think is we're going to give away taxpayer money to corporations to get them to move here, and that means there's a guy sitting on his couch right now flipping through watching TV who in 6 months will actually be on the assembly line or be working for the factory, and then that's the job that's created. But I don't think many people think that the jobs that are going to be created are Chinese people in China right now that are going to be taking those jobs. I don't think the newspaper, I don't think that was the media's understanding when they report your next big economic development project with such fanfare and pomp and circumstance. Again, listen, let me just tell you guys something. I understand, okay? I understand. Government is going to give away taxpayer money to big corporations to give them an advantage over existing Arkansas companies. I'm going to lose that battle because every state does it, and it's really frustrating. Every state will give away money to an outside company and actually use the if we're talking Alabama or Mississippi or whatever, use the existing taxpayer base to actually fund competition for a skilled workforce. And I get it. I'm going to lose that battle. But why does it have to be the communist Chinese? Just somebody tell me. Well, nothing to see here, right? We got an answer to that question. We have an answer to that question. Why does it have to be the communist Chinese? Because of the law firm. Period. Now, prove that wrong. See, these are all the questions that the media just needs to be hammering. They need to be asking these questions. I mean, the governor has been given space on, is it CNBC or MSNBC? Column space a couple years ago, getting to write about all this Chinese money coming into Arkansas. This was before the election of Donald Trump. And it always was odd, because if these were Russian companies, people would be losing their minds. Right? Justifiably so. Russia's not benign in what their goals are. We know who Vladimir Putin is. If these were Russian companies, but is it because the Chinese are textbook communists and the left is all, like, for example, it's so ironic. The left is so paranoid of Russia just because they want to remove Donald Trump from office. But when the Russia government was the Soviet Union, the leftist media loved the Soviet Union because in their heads, Marxism should work very well on a chalkboard. It just doesn't, because human beings are greedy. And, human beings will use government to justify the mass murder of their population, the starvation of their population. And that's what the Soviet Union is. That's what statism has done over the last, that's what statism has done in the 20th century alone. I mean, 100 million people, is it more than that? I can't remember. but it's a lot. But it's no question, it is a fact that the left mainstream media favored the Soviet Union in their coverage. It's very critical of President Reagan. Said he was stupid. Said he didn't lack said he did lack the intelligence to deal with this problem. They were rooting against him. And we have the same thing going on with the media in China, really. And now, I don't know how the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, quite frankly, runs a story like this. Just throw this up there, Joe. This headline today, this morning, it says, quote, compiled by Democrat Gazette staff from Wire Report. So they print this. Hundreds of Hong Kong protesters leave the siege. So, Hong Kong's got all these anti-government protesters. They're holed up in the Hong Kong University. And, the police are about to crack down. They're going to say surrender's your only option. So it's going to get very violent. So a lot of people are leaving. Now, here's the thing. The coverage of this raises more questions. Like, why do we want people to immigrate here and open up companies? Why do we want to give taxpayer money to governments that are treating their citizens so terribly in Hong Kong, to people who are, they're trying to take away the remaining freedoms that Hong Kong has? Why would we want to do business with the communist Chinese when they kidnap pregnant women in the middle of the night and murder their babies because they violated China's one-child policy? Why would we want to do business with the destroyer of churches? Why would we want to do business with a government that takes political dissidents and makes money off of them by selling their organs to the highest international bidder, where you have people that can schedule heart transplants from a continent away? Why would we want to do business with a government that puts their political dissidents in camps and scans their DNA upon entry into the camp so that they know which organs will match which potential wealthy, elite, globalist customers? You tell me. They have these machines that they hook their dissidents up to that keep the organs oxygenated so the life can pass from the subject, but the organs will be fine. And so they're making, $200,000-$300,000 per dissident, and so they get to eliminate a political problem, right? A political nuisance, whether you are a religion they don't like or you believe in freedom. They get to remove your life from this planet, and then they get to profit from the sale of your organs: eyes, lungs, heart, kidney, liver. Why would we want to do business? Why would we want these companies that are Chinese communist entities to come to Arkansas? See, these are questions that the Arkansas Democrat Gazette should be asking, and it's a very simple dot to connect. And yet they're silent. So yes, Conduit is the lone voice in the wilderness. We will continue to expose this. I see that John Brummett still hasn't written about it. His piece out today, A More Partisan Time. Arkansas Republicans are adamant that Democrats may not now nominate someone else for U.S. Senator Tom Cotton to beat. As you know, the Democrat whom Cotton originally would have beaten dropped out. So it's another article about Josh Mahoney. I haven't read the whole thing. Why not an article about Ace's son? Why hasn't the Arkansas Democrat Party said anything? That right there is so incredible to me. You know what people will say? If you ask the right person, they'll say, well, they like him. They like him. And so it's not any big deal for a Democrat to ignore impropriety, the appearance of making extra money off of taxpayers because right now they see ASA as the best case scenario from keeping the state from actually implementing conservative economic philosophy. Telephone number 870-275-9799. We break for 1 minute. Back in just a minute. Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
As we speak, Beijing is employing a whole-of-government approach, using political, economic, and military tools as well as propaganda to advance its influence and benefit its interests in the United States.
And I wanted to welcome back to Arkansas Chairman Chu. Please give Chairman Chu a round of applause.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Matt Walsh over at the Daily Wire yesterday. Chick-fil-A just caved to the rage mob. They're about to learn the hard way that surrendering never pays off. He talks about how Chick-fil-A, one of the last remaining large companies to stand in defiance of the politically correct police and the LGBT rage mob, has suddenly and inexplicably caved. Chick-fil-A President and Chief Operating Officer Tim Tassopoulos announced in an interview that the company will no longer donate to certain Christian charities that the aforementioned rage mob has deemed anti-LGBT. Tassopoulos says that as the company goes into new markets, he wants to be clear about who we are, and who they are appears to confirm the old maxim about becoming what you eat, or in this case, what you serve. A chicken. Beginning next year, Chick-fil-A will move away from its current philanthropic structure. Bisno has learned after donating to more than 300 charitable organizations this year, the Atlanta-based fast food chain will instead focus on 3 initiatives, with one accompanying charity each: education, homelessness, and hunger. Which charities will lose out, Matt Walsh asks? Now that Chick-fil-A has shifted its focus to education, homelessness, and hunger? The company confirms that it will be breaking ties with the Salvation Army, the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and the Paul Anderson Youth Home. In other words, it will stop donating to charities that will help with education, homelessness, and hunger in order to focus more on education, homelessness, and hunger. And, of course, the real sin of these unfortunate organizations is not that they fail to help exactly the people Chick-fil-A says it wants to help, but they are all Christian. They are all Christian. That's why. And as LGBT protesters have been screaming ever since Chick-fil-A CEO Dan Cathy defended biblical marriage in an interview 7 years ago, the fact that they are Christian automatically makes them anti-LGBT. RSTLNE, would you like to buy Val? We're going to be back in just a moment. Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break.
big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
As we speak, Beijing is employing a whole-of-government approach, using political, economic, and military tools as well as propaganda to advance its influence and benefit its interests in the United States.
And I have wanted to welcome back to Arkansas Chairman Chu. Please give Chairman Chu a round of applause.
China is also applying this power in more proactive ways than ever before to exert influence and interfere in the domestic policy and politics of this country.
Chairman Chu, I got to know as he is the CEO and chairman of Shandong Ruyi Technology Group out of Shandong Province.
Over the past 17 years, China's GDP has grown ninefold. It's become the second largest economy in the world. Much of this success was driven by American investment in China. And the Chinese Communist Party has also used an arsenal of policies inconsistent with free and fair trade, including tariffs, quotas, currency manipulation, forced technology transfer, intellectual property theft, and industrial subsidies that are handed out like candy to foreign investment.
We've been to Shandong Province a number of times since I've been governor. We've called on people, and Chairman Chu gave us the opportunity to meet with him at Ruyi, at their technology group there in Shandong, and saw his incredible facility. We asked him to visit Arkansas. He did. So Chairman Chu, we're delighted to have you here. I'm excited about signing this agreement with you, and I welcome you to Arkansas.
These policies have built Beijing's manufacturing base at the expense of its competitors, especially the United States of America.
And I wanted to recognize Chairman Lee to my right.
Everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Let me get my microphone working here. Can you hear me okay, Joe? I've got this switch that's failing on me once again. Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being with us. As I was talking to you earlier, now's the time we're going to talk to Dr. Bruce L. Hartman. I've had him on before. He's the author of the book, Your Faith Has Made You Well, A Radical New Way to Create Peace and Hope. Dr. Hartman, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you today, Paul?
I'm doing good. Now, originally, I scheduled you to come on to talk about these 100 students or so that walked out of an Oregon high school because they felt unsafe because there was a Chick-fil-A food truck at their high school football game. And we've got some new developments, though. Obviously, I'm sure you know, Chick-fil-A has now said they're no longer going to donate to charities that they typically do, Salvation Army, as well as two others, the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. What are your thoughts on this? What do you see this as?
Well, I mean, it's discouraging. What didn't get reported was that only represented 5% of the student population. Chick-fil-A has for years had a very tolerant policy of hiring and has been always very Christian-like. It's a little bit difficult to find out that Salvation Army is no longer going to get contributions from Chick-fil-A because of all the good they do in the world. I don't think I know Salvation Army is not opposed to hate against any group. So it's a little disturbing that our country keeps reacting to headlines and not really looking underneath the hood.
Some conservative writers are saying that this is a cave to the mob because a lot of people think it's profit motive. Chick-fil-A is extremely popular. It's expanding in spite of the negative publicity that it's received from the mainstream media. You know, when their CEO went out and defended biblical marriage, and the backlash, according to the media, was swift, and yet the company has grown. And yet, so now it just kind of feels there's a lot of people that kind of just scratching their head saying, hey, wait a second, this kind of seems just very odd that they would do this. It's almost like they are caving to the mob.
I would agree with you. I mean, that's how I view it. What doesn't get reported, and I'm surprised Chick-fil-A, didn't, well, they obviously have the same information I do. After he came out and proposed that, not proposed, but stated that he supported biblical marriage, their sales, same-store sales, went up 13% the next year. So if their motive was to cave and to give in, then I think you're going to see the opposite reaction. I think there's a real myth in America today about how people are kind of fed up with political correctness, kind of fed up with these very thin headlines that we read. For instance, it doesn't take much work to find out that there's almost 2,000 students at this high school, but 100 of them define the other 1,900. That's the thing that Chick-fil-A's caved into, is letting the small minority, small mob dictate policy in our country.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I've got a guest coming up just coincidentally the next hour, and we're going to talk about how GLAAD, the pro-LGBT RSTLNE Would You Like to Buy Val community, they're now wanting 20% of all TV characters to be gay or lesbian or one of those letters by 2025. And if you just look at the percentage breakdown in population, it's not even close to 20%, right?
No, it's not. It's at least by my calculations and the statistics that I've seen, it's at least 150% overstated. But if we're going to allow that to occur, then what about the 70% of Americans who are Christian? Shouldn't 70% of all people that get all jobs and all roles in TV or all roles in the Congress, shouldn't we also insist that we then get that as well? I think the Christian population, which is the largest political identity, is probably the least recognized.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's really kind of swept under the rug. It's ignored, put behind a curtain in a lot of ways. That we're moving toward this idea that you can't express your belief in God or your faith in public life if you're a Christian. I'm curious to know, in the context though, we're talking again with the author of Your Faith Has Made You Well, A Radical New Way to Create Peace and Hope. It's Dr. Bruce Hartman. Now, Dr. Hartman, I'm curious, do you think, let's just take those 100 students that felt unsafe because there was a Chick-fil-A food truck at their high school football game. Do you think now that the Chick-fil-A has decided to make this decision where they're not going to give money to these Christian charities because they're Christian? Do you think that will appease those 100 students? Do you think those 100 students will now feel safe?
Well, tyranny is never appeased. That's the one lesson of history. You can never give in to evil, into these mobs and the crowds that they go out and just say what they think is right without really considering other people's feelings. Anybody who's been in a Chick-fil-A knows two things. Number one, it's the most pleasant, politest fast food operation in America. So that's number one. Number two, they do support their Christian values. What a lot of people don't realize is when the Super Bowl was held last year in Atlanta, Super Bowl's held on a Sunday. There's a Chick-fil-A outlet in that Super Bowl or in that stadium. They didn't open. So that's why what they did is a little bit surprising. They've always been very strong in their belief that their employees don't work on Sundays, which is a Christian belief. But now they've given into the mob. This is very, very concerning.
Yeah, that's a great point. I wonder what happened since the Super Bowl earlier this year and now. And I mean, and you know what? That's interesting. If it is about profit motive, you know, we're trying to be more inclusive. We're getting into other markets. And if it's about money, are they then now going to reverse their closed on Sunday policy? That would be interesting too. And honestly, I find it very fascinating that Chick-fil-A was just written about in the Kanye West song, Closed on Sunday, you know?
Right. This one of the things I've always admired about Chick-fil-A. A lot of people didn't know that they were always closed on Sunday, yet they do more sales per square foot than any other fast food outlet. And the reason is because their customers support them in what their beliefs are. And I think it's a difficult decision on their part to walk away from their beliefs. The Salvation Army has rescued a lot of drug addicts, a lot of alcoholics. They've done good in the world. Heck, these poor people stand out in the cold all through Christmas ringing their bell. There's nothing within the Salvation Army sphere that I see that is negative to society. If anything, they're probably as good a helper of society as we have.
Yeah, and then you've got the Fellowship of Christian Athletes as well. You know, I mean, they do a lot of good. And what's odd about this, Dr. Hartman, as they say that they're going to focus on education, homelessness, and hunger, but these three charities that they're no longer going to be giving to focus on education, homelessness, and hunger. I mean, so there's no other way, because I'm trying to think, maybe there's more to the story we don't know, but I don't know how there's any other way to interpret this other than they're not going to give to these groups because they are overtly Christian groups, and the LGBT believes that if you are an overtly Christian group, then you hate LGBT people, and that's not true at all. You may not affirm their lifestyles, but you don't hate them.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, the two commandments that Jesus tells us to follow cover a lot of our actions. Number one, love God. Number two, love our neighbor. Because we disagree with the way a person lives and we don't believe it's biblical, doesn't mean that we don't love them as a neighbor. Doesn't mean if they fall down in the street we won't lift them up. Doesn't mean if they're in a car accident we won't rush over to help them. That's the narrative that's getting missed here by this very small minority of people. 5% in one high school were able to get a major corporation in America to change their Christian views. Is amazing.
Wait a second now. So you think that this story in Oregon is directly, you think this was the catalyst that made them, or maybe the straw that broke the camel's back that made them make this announcement this week?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, are events coincidental, or are events the ones that change the narrative? So, for instance, this just occurred, this walkout, and then a couple of weeks later, Chick-fil-A changes their viewpoint. It's very surprising for a very disciplined Christian corporation that has stood up for a long time for the Christian values. I'm just really surprised they'd let 5% of a student population dictate their business decisions.
Wow. Dr. Bruce L. Hartman, always appreciate you coming on the show, sir. Appreciate what you're doing, and we'd love to have you come on and analyze these events again sometime.
Absolutely, Paul, and you have a blessed day.
You too, sir. He's the author, again, of Your Faith Has Made You Well, A Radical New Way to Create Peace and Hope. Folks, you can check that out at Amazon.com. Dr. Bruce L. Hartman will make a YouTube video of this. We'll put it up on our YouTube page and up at conduitnews.com today. Don't go anywhere. Back in just a moment.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduit for Commerce.
Hey guys, this is Larry King. Are you sick and tired
Who
of
is the
prostate
founder of
pills
Sun
that don't
Paper,
work? I've got great
Shandong
news for you.
province
I had
in
prostate
China.
problems that were driving me nuts. I tried several different natural products. None of
Also
them
want
worked.
to
One day I
recognize
heard
Secretary
about
Ma
prostagenics.
of
It
Shandong
beat over
province.
157 other prostate supplements in independent lab tests and was rated number
As
one
President
most
Trump said
powerful
just this
prostate
week,
supplement in the
in his
world.
words,
So I got some prostagenics,
we
and boy,
rebuilt
am I
China
glad I did. Now my prostate
last
troubles are a thing of the past. I sleep like
Last
a champ.
November,
I feel
as
like
you
I did
know,
20 years ago.
I
Do yourself a
traveled to
huge favor.
Shandong
Do what I did
province.
and get yourself some
I met with Chairman Lee.
prostagenics.
I toured Sun Paper Company along with Mike Preston. While in China, we signed a letter of intent on behalf of the state of Arkansas with Sun Paper, indicating that Sun Paper wanted to put a major bioproducts mill in South.
Money, power, prestige, essence, 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 ace, ace, ace. Available now from aristocrats serving Arkansas. From Zenata Rhino Collection. The fragrance of backroom deals. Deals. Nepotism. Nepotism. The aroma of higher taxes. Subliminal. Subliminal. Deception. Deep state. Ace. 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 Made right here in Arkansas by a taxpayer-funded Chinese factory. Communist. Communist. Every bottle carefully crafted for you. Gender neutral. Nothing says aristocrat like Essence of Bureaucrat. Essence of Bureaucrat by Asa.
Available now in the Marble Palace gift shop.
Paul Harrell parody. Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks. Welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for being with us. We're gonna get low. What would we call it? Toilet humor. I mean, there's no other way to say it. Eric Swalwell farted on national television. Apparently, Eric Swalwell passed gas on national television. And if you think that he didn't, then you believe in an incredible amount of coincidences, because the man pauses in mid-sentence, you hear the noise, and you can almost see that he smirks a little bit, and then continues talking. This is not edited. Just so you know, this is not edited. This was a bomb dropped. On MSNBC's Chris Matthews hasn't been relevant, or I don't think he's ever trended on Twitter. He was trending on Twitter because of #Fartgate. Here is Congressman and former presidential candidate Eric Swalwell, ladies and gentlemen. Let's see if we can.
An election.
Okay. Back it up. Back it up. Back it up.
The evidence is uncontradicted that the president used taxpayer dollars to ask the Ukrainians to help him cheat.
Oh, no. Okay, can you refresh it real quick? That sounds like it's edited. It sounds like
that the president used taxpayer dollars to ask the Ukrainians to help him cheat an election. Dollars to ask the Ukrainians to help him cheat an election.
Ukrainians to help them cheat an election.
Okay, so that's one Twitter thread. Now, MSNBC, in their defense, MSNBC is claiming that was the sound of a cup scraping across the desk, which it prompted Steven Crowder to tweet this. They're saying it was the Hardball says, sorry to disappoint the conspiracy theorists. It was the Hardball mug scraping across the desk. Get yours today. Steven Crowder writing, the Hardball mug isn't responsible for Fartgate, and Epstein didn't kill himself. And next we have this, which is Eric Swalwell. Be proud, be bold, fart loud. Hashtag Fartgate. If Trump tweets about Fartgate, I swear I'm going to work tomorrow, or I'm not going to work tomorrow. Okay, then we have that. Then we have this, which is another tweet. Eric Swalwell is not a candidate that you can stand behind. Let's listen to it one more time, shall we?
Taxpayer dollars to ask the Ukrainians to help him cheat an election. And the complaint that I've heard from Republicans, taxpayer dollars to ask the Ukrainians to help him cheat an election. And the complaint that I've heard.
So, yeah, this is, again, Chris Matthews has never been so relevant. And if you didn't, if you don't think it was an actual fart, there's some guy out there that has an edited version where it's infrared evidence of Eric Swalwell. I never thought I would say the word fart on radio, but it's the news. This is our life now. Go ahead, Joe. Here for those of you watching.
Taxpayer dollars to ask the Ukrainians to help him cheat an election. And the complaint that I've heard from taxpayer dollars to ask the Ukrainians to help him cheat an election. And the complaint
Big
that I've heard
plume of infrared smoke. It's the Predator vision, you know, a Predator. And it's a big plume of smoke that comes up behind him. Oh my goodness! So yeah, that's in the news. What do you think? You think it was a rubber mug or a mug scraping across? I just say it has to be rubber. I have my coffee mug. Well, I'm going to do some experiments. See if I can't make this noise here. So, did you realize that the Democrat Attorney General's Association? I saw this headline. The Democrat Attorney General's Association has announced that abortion will be a critical issue that will determine whether or not the Democrat Attorneys General Association Political Action Committee will support you as a Democrat candidate running for Attorney General in your state. Max Brantley with the coverage. The Democrat Attorneys General Association will only endorse candidates who support the right to access abortion and are committed to publicly backing and protecting reproductive rights. This is like, includes access to contraceptives and abortion on demand, you know. So if you had any like qualms, or I mean, you'd have to be living on another planet at this point, but if you had any qualms or anything, you know, about, well, maybe there's some Democrats that are still, they're pro-life and they just, they're just still good old John F. Kennedy Democrats. No. That's, those times have passed. The times aren't a-changing. The times have changed. Okay? And it's, Democrat, I don't see how you can be a Democrat anymore knowing what we know about abortion. And this has been a problem. Don't misunderstand me. I say this in full understanding and knowledge that the fact that the radical social positions of the Democrat Party have hurt the Republican Party, especially here in Arkansas, because the Democrats have switched parties and they really have been. They're still big government. They still believe in big spending. They still believe in higher taxes. But they just can't get behind a party that's murdering babies and selling their body parts for a profit, which, I mean, I guess we should be appreciative of that because abortion is a genocide. Abortion represents the lack of Christian consensus or the crumbling of Christian consensus, and it happened back in 1974. That's what it represents, or that's what Francis Schaeffer, the great theologian Francis Schaeffer, he said this in his book, How Should We Then Live? That 1974 marked the beginning kind of the end when they said that it was your constitutional right to have an abortion. And I also tell you this, that's why I wasn't surprised at the Supreme Court inventing a constitutional right of marriage. A lot of people forget, it had to do with gay marriage, same-sex marriage, but it really had to do with marriage, if you think about it. And it's completely bogus that the word marriage or the government should be regulating marriage at all is anywhere in the document. Our founding fathers never dreamed that such basic tenets of civilization, not Western civilization, but civilization period, the pairing of male and female individuals that start families and raise families, and then those kids have kids of their own. They never thought these basic institutions would come into question, and yet they have. 870-275-9799 is the telephone number if you want to contribute to the program. Let's see here. Still nothing on John Brummett. Let me go to the Asa Hutchinson Law Group for a second. Can we go to their website real quick? One more time, Joe. The Asa Hutchinson Law Group, if you scroll over lawyers, I would just like for you to go to the top, get my face out of there so you can see this, and just kind of hover over lawyers. Okay, so Asa Hutchinson is still listed there if you hover over lawyers. Okay, now go back to the client page, and then we're going to scroll down. We want to make sure they still have the same clients, Walmart, Sue Carne. Let's see. Yeah, then they've still got Rise Ever, the Jonesboro Chinese company, TY Garments, the Little Rock Chinese company, iStation, the American company that got a $3.7 million contract with the state of Arkansas. All these are clients. Dragon Woodland. Yeah, Dragon Woodland getting an economic development a deal of some kind. Also clients of the Asa Hutchinson law firm. All those are still there. They haven't edited the website. They haven't changed it. Just wanted to make sure there hasn't been any changes because, I mean, I don't know. I'm just wondering, will anybody else cover this? Will the national media cover it? I'm doing my best, folks. I'm doing my best to get somebody to write a story about this because it's obviously news, judging by the reaction that I'm hearing from insiders and folks who have a huge problem with this. They're scratching their heads. It's going to be extremely awkward if the national media writes a story about this before the state media does. And I don't know where Andrew DeMillo is. I honestly, Andrew DeMillo, Associated Press, works out of Little Rock. I don't know why he hasn't written a story about this. At least I haven't seen one. He works for the AP. That would go out on the wire. It would get picked up everywhere. Why hasn't Andrew DeMillo written a story about the governor and his son on a trip to China, which reveals that the same Chinese companies that are locating in Arkansas at the disadvantage of the taxpayer are the same companies that give money to the governor's law firm? Why is this not a story everywhere? Are we to believe there's honestly nothing to see here? The evidence is still there? Well, there's no evidence to suggest. What do you mean there's no evidence? There's a website with the governor's name where he gets top billing. And they advertise that he's the governor and they're opening offices in Madrid. Back in a minute.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
In Arkansas.
The Communist Party has set its sights on controlling 90% of the world's most advanced industries, including robotics, biotechnology, and artificial intelligence. To win the commanding heights of the 21st century economy, Beijing has directed its bureaucrats and businesses to obtain American intellectual property, the foundation of our economic leadership, by any means necessary.
Chairman Lee and I met yesterday. Chairman Lee indicated to me that Sun Paper has selected Arkadelphia in Clark County as the location of a $1 billion bioproducts mill.
Beijing now requires many American businesses to hand over their trade secrets as the cost of doing business in China. It also coordinates and sponsors the acquisition of American firms to gain ownership of their creations. Worst of all, Chinese security agencies have masterminded the wholesale theft of American technology, including cutting-edge military blueprints. And using that stolen technology, the Chinese Communist Party is turning plowshares into swords on a massive scale.
Well, thank you all for joining us via Skype from Beijing this morning. Here in Beijing, it is 10 p.m. in the evening. I've had a very successful trip to China.
China now spends as much on its military as the rest of Asia combined. And Beijing has prioritized capabilities to erode America's military advantages on land, at sea, in the air, and in space.
I've spoken at Tsinghua University here in Beijing, which was a treat for me to speak with young Chinese students about Arkansas, and also to talk about the relationship between China and the United States.
China wants nothing less than to push the United States of America from the Western Pacific and attempt to prevent us from coming to the aid of our allies. But they will fail. Beijing is also using its power like never before. Chinese ships routinely patrol around the Senkaku Islands, which are administered by Japan. And while China's leader stood in the Rose Garden at the White House in 2015 and said that his country had, and I quote, no intention to militarize the South China Sea. Today, Beijing has deployed advanced anti-ship and anti-air missiles atop an archipelago of military bases constructed on artificial islands. China's aggression was on display this week when a Chinese naval vessel came within 45 yards of the USS Decatur as it conducted freedom of navigation operations in the South China Sea, forcing our ship to quickly maneuver to avoid collision. Despite such reckless harassment, the United States Navy will continue to fly, sail, and operate wherever international law allows and our national interests demand. We will not be intimidated, and we will not stand down.
And we'll be calling on multiple prospects in China, as well as continuing our relationship with Sun Paper in Shandong Province.
In recent years, China has taken a sharp U-turn toward control and oppression of its own people. Today, China has built an unparalleled surveillance state, and it's growing more expansive and intrusive.
Democrats and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
We have this guy over at stream.org, Michael Brown. He is a Christian writer, and a lot of this news at Chick-fil-A, and we're going to drop it here in a minute. Well, we're probably not. We're probably going to talk about it coming up here with Ken Yang, as well as this other story that's up at familycouncil.org. But this struck me. I read this morning. Didn't have a chance to read it, and I've got some other news about economic. Did anybody see this this story over at Talk Business about the pharmacy expansion-minded drug store operator Express RX announced plans Monday to consolidate its varied office locations in several states into a new headquarters location in Little Rock. More on that in just a second. But first, this is Michael Brown. Listen to this. Not the hands up, don't shoot Michael Brown. As a leader in the church and speaking on behalf of many followers of Jesus, I am submitting this appeal to the ownership and management of Chick-fil-A. Please do not cave to the LGBT activists and their allies. Please do not capitulate to the pressure of the radical left. Please do not throw the Fellowship of Christian Athletes and the Salvation Army under the bus. Please reverse your decision to no longer fund these important Christian organizations. Do you remember when millions of Christians stood with you when the radical left called for a boycott of your fine company? Do you remember when those Christians turned the boycott into a boycott? These same Christians are scratching their heads today. They're wondering why the company they love so much now feels the need to satisfy the demands of people who despise many of the common values we hold dear. Well, why cater to the haters? Do you think they will hate you less? Do you think they will now welcome you into their cities, into their campuses? And even if they do, is that the price you're willing to pay for more profits? Why alienate your loyal customers? Hasn't God blessed your decision to close on Sundays in honor of your historic convictions? Isn't your company growing by the year? This is despite the efforts of the activists and haters. And with the help of your loyal customers and outstanding efforts of your workforce, you continue to grow and thrive. Why then alienate the very people who helped make you great? Kanye West even wrote a song about you in his new off-the-charts Jesus is King album. You should be leaning into your Christian customer base, not turning it away. Even more, Governor Mike Huckabee, the very man who organized the nationwide boycott in 2012, is expressing his public dismay. He tweeted in August 2012, I coordinated a national Chick-fil-A Appreciation Day after they were being bullied by militant hate groups. Millions showed up. Today, Chick-fil-A betrayed loyal customers for money. I regret believing they would stay true to convictions of founder Truett Cathy. Sad. In August 20, and that's the tweet. You can see that there. Scroll down and show them the Mike Huckabee tweet, if you can. Did you see the radical left caring about the opinions of tens of millions of conservative Christians? Do you see them stepping back from their support of abortion or transgender activism? Not a chance. Yet Chick-fil-A feels the need to step back from supporting fine Christian organizations because you are falsely branded as anti-gay. These Christian organizations simply hold the biblical teaching on marriage and family, the same teaching the church has held sacred for almost 2,000 years, and neither one of them even emphasizes LGBT issues, let alone focuses on turning homosexuals into heterosexuals. The Salvation Army devotes its efforts to meeting humanitarian needs and simply holds to biblical standards. And the Fellowship of Christian Athletes focuses on bringing Christian athletes together for fellowship, discipleship, and evangelism. Yet you now cut off support from them because of the protests of Bible-mocking activists. You throw them under the bus because it's too politically incorrect. You choose to stand with those who celebrate two women marrying and against those who say that kids deserve a mom and a dad. You stand with those who advocate for males who identify as females competing in women's sports and against those who care about women's rights. You stand with those who block you from opening new restaurants on college campuses and stand against those who have enjoyed your food and services for decades. I read the words of Rodney Bullard, the head of Chick-fil-A Foundation, who told Business Insider earlier this year that the company worked with the Salvation Army and Fellowship of Christian Athletes because the programs were relevant and impactful in the community. He continued, quote, "For us, that's a much higher calling than any political or cultural war that's being waged," end quote. But the Salvation Army and the FCA continue to be relevant and impactful in the community, and by supporting these fine organizations, you're simply doing what is right and being true to your Christian roots. As for the political and cultural wars being raised, the fact that you've closed on Sundays already sends a message. As for the anti-LGBT charges, they are completely manufactured and unrelated to reality. They are tools used to bludgeon faithful followers of Jesus, either as individuals or as companies, and by caving in to the culture wars, you have now made a louder statement than ever before. I urge you, then, to listen to your constituents and reverse your decision. We will all honor you for doing what is right. We'll forgive you for your wrong decision. Reverse yourself today. You'll be blessed tomorrow. Reverse yourself today, and the good feelings will remain. As for haters, the haters are going to continue to hate. Stay with your wrong decision, and you'll leave a bad taste in your constituents' mouths. Is that what you really desire? Again, that's from a guy by the name of Dr. Michael Brown. He's host of the nationally syndicated radio show Line of Fire. Now, I feel like that sums it up. I mean, I read that this morning first thing, and I thought, well, yep, that pretty much sums it up. Only thing I'll add is, do you really think this will appease those who have a problem with Chick-fil-A? They're going to complain about something else. I mean, and this is sad, you know. I mean, it doesn't make me want to go to Chick-fil-A, I'll tell you that much. I mean, just because the media was telling you Chick-fil-A, you know, can you believe what they're doing? And media was telling us to be outraged, and instead we said, no, well, we're going to go have a chicken sandwich. You could say the same thing now, but it just feels like a slap in the face, you know. So anyway, we'll see what happens with this. I don't know. There's certainly a lot of backlash on it. Hey, back to this headline: Talk Business and Politics, talkbusiness.net. The operator of Express RX announced plans to consolidate and move its headquarters to Little Rock. They're saying this will add 24 new white-collar positions to the state's tight labor pool. They made the announcement at the Little Rock Chamber of Commerce. Governor Asa Hutchinson was there. And here is a quote from Governor Hutchinson. "I am excited that you allow me to make this announcement and that you have made this announcement possible. The key fact is that they are a growing business. There is something special about getting a headquarters location. That means as they grow in Kansas, or they grow in Mississippi, or they grow in Oklahoma, that means they are growing in Arkansas at the same time." So Hutchinson making this announcement with RX Express, this pharmaceutical company. All right, they're this pharmacy company. So I just got to thinking during the break, I was like, you know, if you're the CEO of a big company like that, and if it was well known, look, I see our Secretary of Commerce, Mike Preston, is there. If it was well known that your son and your law firm were benefiting from the same companies that you're giving taxpayer money to, and I know that I don't think there's any economic incentives. Are there incentives here? Let me see this. Incentives. Perkins also said that incentives offered by the state economic event in Little Rock played a role. Okay. Yeah, so there are incentives. Good grief. What the? Okay, so Incentives offered by the State Economic Development Commission in Little Rock played a role in Express RX's decision to merge its spread-out offices to one location in the city's Riverdale area. AEDC spokesperson Brandy Hinkle said Express RX was offered state incentives through the department's Create Rebate and Tax Back programs. The Create Rebate program provides qualified businesses a financial incentive equal to 3.9 to 5% of annual payroll of full-time permanent employees. Okay, so they're getting taxpayer incentives to do this, to locate here. So now we have to ask the question: is Express RX contracting or using the governor's law firm for services? Understand, you have to ask the question, because literally, until we address the China problem, the Chinese elephant in the room, everything else is suspect. Every part of his agenda, every vote he asks the legislature to give him, this man stood on his high horse and called for the resignation of Mickey Gates because he didn't pay his taxes. Okay? Now, and let's be clear, Mickey Gates maintains otherwise, but certainly the charge from the DFNA was he didn't pay taxes. Okay. Mickey Gates trying to keep his own money that he created and he earned. If you believe that, if you believe the media spin. Okay, or what's in the reports. This, in many cases, is much worse because you're enriching yourself off of the taxpayer in a way that very well may be illegal, or may be legal, but is certainly unethical and outrageous if the people find out about it. This is a huge problem, okay? Express RX getting taxpayer incentives, moving their headquarters to Little Rock. Governor Asa Hutchinson, is his law firm benefiting? Every single thing he does from now on, you have to ask that question. Until this is addressed, or until this is ended and stopped, how in the world are we just going to pretend there's nothing to this? And again, good grief. Do you think that the CEO of Express RX knows about these reports? Because I'm not so sure. If I were getting taxpayer incentives and everything was normal and it's just a normal taxpayer incentive, I'm not even sure I'd want the governor to be there at this point. You understand? Because for inquisitive minds, you're associating with somebody that it might be getting extra money by bringing you here. Or people might think that, or I'm obviously asking the question. This is not an unreasonable question to ask. Oh, we got the half-cent sales tax that we need to maintain. We need to keep the half-cent sales tax to fund our roads. Okay, the governor's going to be the front man for that. Is his law firm going to be representing the construction contractors? Well, we certainly need to know. Literally, everything, until this is explained, everything he advocates for, a healthy skepticism of government and people in power, you have to ask yourself, is there a dollar attached to this that's going to enrich Asa Hutchinson's law firm or his family members? And I mean all of his family members. Not just Asa the Third, everybody. And that's why that's got to be one of the reasons why the Democrat Gazette is leaving this alone, because maybe they know a lot of stuff that I don't know. Maybe the breadcrumbs here are not difficult to follow at all. Maybe we're just missing another piece of the puzzle. I don't know, but I guess my point is, I don't understand, like, you've got talk business and politics, essentially tooting the horn of the governor once again. We've got economic incentives, economic development, another company moving to Little Rock, rah, rah. We're waving our pom-poms. And yet, nobody is going to say communist Chinese entities that call themselves companies, Rise Ever, TY Garments, and Dragon Woodland, that are receiving economic development deals, in some cases cash payments, from the Quick Action Closing Fund, are also paying the governor's law firm as clients. Period. It's a factual statement. Is he counsel to this law firm? Let's assume that he's not. Okay. When did that change? Will he be counsel to the law firm after he leaves office? That'd be a great question to ask him, wouldn't it? How do we know that Express RX is not going to be a client of the governor's law firm? We do know that the group iStation from Texas, the education group, the education vendor, is a client of the governor's law firm. And they got a $3.7 million contract, according to transparency.gov, from the state of Arkansas with the Department of Education. $3.7 million. Why is nobody talking about that? I'm sick. I'm sick. I really just thought that the mainstream media still, I mean, yeah, okay, you guys are liberal, but I thought, well, there's no way they can ignore something like this. And I was wrong. Conduit is the lone voice in the wilderness, with the exception of one story by KATV and a couple of mentions by Max Brantley. Why Max Brantley isn't having a conniption? Why hasn't the Arkansas Democrat Party been trashing Asa Hutchinson over him making money off of the taxpayer, or his family making money off of the taxpayer, or him setting his law firm up to grow so that he can walk into lucrative deals after he leaves office? The Arkansas Democratic Party doesn't think that that's news. Where's Gwen Moritz at Arkansas Business? I know that she's leftist, but I've read her stuff before, and I've thought it was good in terms of trying to expose this or that. Where's she? Why isn't Gwen Moritz writing about this? I mean, this is about people who are Democrats, Republicans, and everybody in between. Is this the type of government we want? Does it just go unaddressed? Is Asa above the law? Is Asa above the law? Okay, if Asa's above the law, I guess, okay, all right. News to me. I didn't think that was a thing. You know, certainly the Democrats don't think the president's above the law, because they're going after him, every which way. You got Democrats, you got the Democrat Party of Arkansas more outraged about what's going on with Donald Trump, a Republican, than they do what's going on in their own state. Why? Somebody, what is it? What was it called? Balance the equation here for me. I don't understand this. Telephone number 870-275-9799. We'll be back in a minute.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your value.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Everybody's talking about Tammany men growing rich on graft. But nobody thinks of drawing the distinction between honest graft and dishonest graft. There's all the difference in the world between the two. I've not gone in for dishonest graft, blackmailing, gamblers, saloon keepers, disorderly people, etc. And neither has any of the men who've made big fortunes in politics. There's an honest graft, and I'm an example of how it works. I might sum up the whole thing by saying, I seen my opportunities and I took them. Just let me explain by examples. My party's in power in the city, and it's going to undertake a lot of public improvements. Well, I'm tipped off, say, that they're going to lay out a new park at a certain place. I see my opportunity and I take it. I go to that place and I buy up all the land that I can in the neighborhood. Then the board of this or that makes its plan public, and there's a rush to get my land, which nobody cared particular for before. End quote. That's from George Washington Plunkett. In the book Jay Cost, A Republic No More, he writes, there was nothing honest about Plunkett's fraud, but he was on to something in drawing the distinction he did. Dishonest graft is criminal activity that harms people directly, whereas honest graft is technically legal and the victim is the common good, not a particular individual. What Plunkett was doing in his day would be outlawed today, but honest graft nevertheless survives in different forms, always changing to stay one step ahead of the law. Why is this the case? The answer to that question is the subject of this book. So what follows is not a tale of heroes and villains. Herein you will not find clear-cut victories, glorious moments of truth being spoken to power, or exhilarating climaxes when the hard-charging civic hero triumphs and the citizens' faith in government is restored. If you're looking for that, go read All the President's Men. Similarly, the story here does not have the satisfaction that Calvinism supplies. Government in this account is not a hopeless, immoral cesspool where everybody is out for themselves and nobody does what is right. And the only thing to do is await the cleansing hellfire unleashed by the Almighty. If you're looking for something like that, House of Cards is for you. Instead, this book is about corruption as a permanent, institutionalized feature of our government. Less sexy, perhaps, but it makes for an interesting puzzle. After all, our founding fathers were frankly concerned about corruption, so much so they designed a system to prevent it from occurring. Yet it hasn't occurred anyway. Understanding this irony is the purpose of the book in your hands. While this may not offer much of a way of emotional gratification, it is, on closer inspection, much more fascinating, and it can teach us some very important lessons about how our government actually works. This is the opening to A Republic No More. We've had Mr. Cost on the show before to talk about this, actually a couple of times, I think. It's very good. You should check it out. How does Asa Hutchinson, has he ever read a book like this? And when you get to portions like that, do you just, what do you say to yourself? Like when Jeremy Hutchinson, who's gonna be in jail, when you, did they ever read books like this at all? And if they did, what do you say to yourself? Like when you're reading that, do you just say, you just ignore it? I mean, it's like, well, yeah, I mean, that is the system, but I don't see anything wrong with it. I gotta make a living. You know, you gotta make a living. Not all politicians, but many politicians become politicians because they can't create what their neighbors can. So they decide to become a politician so that they can take from others what they couldn't create for themselves. Not all politicians, but a lot of them do. We'll be right back in just a moment.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce. the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
Often with the help of U.S. technology. And when it comes to religious freedom, a new wave of persecution is crashing down on Chinese Christians, Buddhists, and Muslims. Last month, Beijing shut down one of China's largest underground churches. Across the country, authorities are tearing down crosses, burning Bibles, and imprisoning believers. And Beijing has now reached a deal with the Vatican that gives the avowedly atheist Communist Party a direct role in appointing Catholic bishops. For China's Christians, these are desperate times.
So, do you like him as a candidate?
I think he's brought a lot to the table. It's not my message. You know, I worry about the party in terms of expanding our base and what the message does to our recruitment of Hispanics, outreach to minorities. And so you've got to worry about the fall election and whether this is a message that's going to carry in Michigan, Ohio, and Florida, and those states that we need to carry.
The American people deserve to know. In response to the strong stand that President Trump has taken, Beijing is pursuing a comprehensive and coordinated campaign to undermine support for the president, our agenda, and our nation's most cherished ideals.
I think you've got to listen to what he says and how he conducts himself. And I don't know that he would be that different from what he is now in negotiating with Vladimir Putin. So,
you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
No, I don't think it's a good thing. You know, we need people who, in the presidency, that understand how the world works, understands that there's a time for bluster and there's a time for reason.
The Chinese Communist Party is rewarding or coercing American businesses.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it very much. I want to start right here, actually. There's video from Family Council up on the Family Council's website. Joe, listen to this. They do some great videos. I love this guy's voice. He's got some great pipes. Listen.
This is news from Family Council. A major gay rights organization is pushing for 20% of all television characters to be LGBT by the end of year 2025, according to a report called Where We Are on TV, which was released from the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation. The presence of characters who identify as LGBT in television programming is key to changing hearts and minds in culture. The featuring of LGBT-identified characters in movies and TV programming geared toward young children has already begun. Earlier this year, children's programs Arthur and My Little Pony included same-sex weddings and couples. A 2017 episode of Star vs. the Forces of Evil on the Disney Channel depicted gay couples kissing, among others, during a boy band concert. That same year, the Disney Kids series Andy Mack featured a 13-year-old character who realizes he is gay and comes out to his friends. Family Council, promoting, protecting, and strengthening traditional family values in Arkansas. Visit us online at familycouncil.org.
Here with more on this story is Family Council's Ken Yang. Ken, how are you this morning, sir?
Oh, I'm doing good. That video just, it makes me roll my eyes.
I mean, it's nuts, right? I mean, we're talking at most, 5% of the population, but they want by 2025, 20% of all television characters to either be lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual, and the rest of them. And then I guess eventually they're going to want all those to be equal as well.
Yes, you talked about it before. We've talked about it before, where it's their attempt to normalize perversion. Where's the caveat? Not only do they want to, infiltrate our schools, but now they want to infiltrate, the family, the nuclear family, as they've always been trying to tear down. And who's going to tell these children that are watching it at the beginning of the show, guess what? Guess what, kids? Y'all would not exist with a mommy and a daddy and daddy.
Ooh, I love it. You're exactly right. The reason I say I love it is because it's just so not politically correct. And when you, when you said normalize perversion, for those of you that might have a problem with that statement, folks, kids don't know about sex. Like, they don't care about it either. And so we have adults who are obsessed with sex and want to sexualize kids when they're not. They just want to play with trucks and watch some cartoons,
Yeah, man. You get onto not just the gay aspect of it, but now you have the transgender movement, and these people telling boys that they can be girls or girls that they can be boys. And there was another article I think we posted recently about how people that have gone through sex change operations are actually 19 times more likely to commit suicide. But the issue is not like they're not going to become happier because you've normalized their perversion. There's a deeper problem that needs to be addressed. You talk about gender dysphoria and it is a mental illness that needs to be addressed. And so whether it's LGBT or whichever letter they want to use, they have pushed really, really hard to try to normalize this type of behavior and to try to call everyone that's not on board of normalizing it some sort of bigot, discriminatory person.
Yeah, and nothing could be further from the truth. I say this not knowing or not the context is not lost on me, Ken. That Disney Plus just launched their streaming service, and I know a lot of people are excited about it and everything. But the fact that you have Disney coming out with a lot of these cartoons as well that are promoting this, and My Little Pony, you've got to have since when were we concerned about My Little Pony, which I'm assuming is a show that's marketed towards girls, but you've got to make sure that you've got the lesbian aspect of this represented. That is perversion. That's perverted. Yep. Like, leave the kids alone. Quit trying to social engineer. Now, it used to be the government that would try to social engineer the people, and they still are. But now we have Hollywood trying to warp and change the minds of our kids.
Yes, and which makes it to where our parents need to be more vigilant. Our teachers need to be more vigilant. People need to start being more vocal. Our elected officials need to be more vocal and pushing back on this LGBT agenda. It's no longer okay to just sit there and say, well, it's not a problem, so there's no need to pass a bathroom bill or a government non-discrimination bill or a religious liberty bill. Like, we keep waiting around for a problem to arise, but instead the problem's already here and they're on the attack, but we just sit idly by because everyone seems to be, well, not everyone, but a good part of our elected officials seems to be afraid of this very vocal minority.
That's exactly right, a very vocal minority. And real quick, coming up in the next legislative session, which isn't until 2021, Ken, I know you've talked about this before, but conscience protection. This is something that I think is going to pass, and I think it's going to be a big victory for the people of Arkansas. Don't you?
I think so. I think it's right in that realm of they like to bring it into the realm, the LGBT people, but it's right in the realm of religious liberty, and it's a pro-life bill all in one. I think you've had Representative Brant Smith, who's carried it for the past 2 sessions on your show before talking about it. And, it's important. Conscience is probably the most important thing that we have, and it's coming under attack. And, it's a law that we need. A state like Illinois has it, for goodness sakes. Mississippi has it. President Donald Trump came out recently and supported the rights of conscience. And, it's time that we protected people's deeply held religious, moral, and ethical convictions when it comes to the healthcare industry in this particular instance. Because we see all these people being forced to. You saw the case in Texas. Thank goodness for that judge of the little boy almost being forced to start gender reassignment treatment.
Yeah, with the hormone blockers. Yeah, so to be clear, if you're a medical professional and you're told that you've got to do X, if it's not an emergency, and it's against your moral convictions, like let's say you were told, hey, you have to transition this person male to female, or you have to perform this abortion, you would be able to say no based on your conscience, and you wouldn't be able to be fired, correct?
Correct. And, if you're a doctor that works for a hospital that's, referring folks, you just say, well, y'all need to refer to a different doctor that wants to do it. If you're a nurse that works for a doctor, you should say no, you need to find someone else on staff that wants to do it. If you're hiring new people, it's not like we're going after employers. If you're an employer, you're hiring new people, and one of the things you do is that type of procedure. You can list it on your list of job duties, and if that person doesn't want to do it, they can go apply to work someplace else.
Yes.
But to say that we hear time and time again, well, it's not a problem. It's not a problem. Why do we need to pass this? It's just like, how many more examples do you need of them coming after our conscience? And it's never a problem until it's something that happens to us personally. But by that point, I believe it's too late.
Can you talk a little bit about the stories that we hear about licensed psychologists who consider themselves Christian psychologists? And you have some people starting to say that, if you got a patient in there, you've got to accept, and let's say that they're trans, you can't deny them that, because you couldn't say it's a psychological condition we need to treat. Or let's say you're a Christian psychologist and you have someone who's gay, and you say you try to steer them toward maybe a biblical worldview. Do we need to address that as part of this as well?
Yes, we need to address whether it's Christian psychologists. We need to address our school counselors. We need to, there are stories in states where children go to their counselors and tell them that I think that I'm a boy when they're a girl, or things in that realm, and that they keep it from their parents. The counselor should be obligated to tell their parents about their children. We hear stories where, instead of normalizing gender dysphoria, where there was this, little boy who ended up, their parents had another baby, and it was a girl, and, he felt like he was neglected, and he was acting out. He started trying to be like a girl, and, instead of just saying, well, let him be a girl, they actually took him, and they saw a counselor, and the little boy was just saying, well, they've been spending so much time with my sister, I thought my parents just like girls, so if I became a girl, they would spend more time on me.
Wow.
And, it's things like that the public and that the news, they don't want to talk about. They don't want to share those types of stories because they just want to normalize their perversion.
Yeah. Ken, one last question, and I know this really wasn't, what we'd planned to talk about, but news kind of developed yesterday. The Chick-fil-A thing, not giving to these Christian charities like Salvation Army and Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Just kind of react to that. I mean, I've already talked to one guest about it today, but I'm pretty disappointed. What do you think?
I'm pretty disappointed, too. It's a poor decision. I posted about it on my public page, and, some people are trying to twist it where they said, oh, well, they're still giving to Christian charities, and they want to protect or they want to help the homeless and all that stuff. But the largest provider of helping the homeless and people in need is the Salvation Army, a group that they're no longer giving to. So to say that they're not kowtowing to the LGBT community is just false. The CEO, Dan Cathy, should know better. This is not within their family's core beliefs that they started Chick-fil-A with, and it's just disappointing. I hope they'll reconsider.
Me too.
And I know, some people want to say, well, they're still helping. Great. I love the fact that they're still helping people, but the Salvation Army and the Fellowship of Christian Athletes are very worthy in deserving charities that they should still be given to.
Ken Yang with Family Council, familycouncil.org. Appreciate it, sir. It's always great to talk to you.
Yep, thank you.
All righty, folks, we're going to take a break. Going to make a YouTube video of this. Be up at conduitnews.com later today. Want to remind everybody, go to conduitnews.com and share the articles that you see there about China and this big elephant in the room that we're facing. Right now, our board says nothing to see here because, there's just not very many people that have been reporting on it. I mean, you barely, you got Max Brantley a little bit reported on it, but now it's kind of fallen off the cliff. KATV 10, 11 days ago had a little blip about it, but then nothing, not one story from the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, and that's the story in and of itself. Why? We got to take a break. Back in a moment.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
Movie studios, universities, think tanks, scholars, journalists, and local, state, and federal officials.
And then, Chairman, you'll look out in the audience and you'll see multiple members of the governor's cabinet. We're also here to support you. You'll see multiple members of the state legislative assembly. They're here to support you, and specifically Senator Caldwell, Senator Ingram, Representative Murdoch, Representative Hollowell. These are your senators and your representatives now. You call on them and they're going to help you, guarantee it. And Senator English, I saw you out there too. Thank you for being here as well.
As we speak, Beijing is employing a whole-of-government approach, using political, economic, and military tools as well as propaganda to advance its influence and benefit its interests in the United States.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government. Bob Maloney here with a developing story from ASA News, The Parrot. China is coming to Arkansas. We go live to the press conference where the Communist Chinese executive is addressing Arkansans for the first time. Let's listen into the translator.
On behalf of the government of the People's Republic of China, we invite you to come and visit the newest named city in Arkansas, China, Delphia. We are very pleased to own an American city. Our communist government is proud to do business with the mediocre state of Arkansas. We are happy to take your money and your trees and send the profits back home. The Communist government of China was pleased to learn the taxpayers of Arkansas are excited to contribute their money with the hope, if you build it, one day jobs will come. We are excited to take your fields of capitalism and turn them into fields of communism, where every Arkansan has nightly dreams of Mao. China is looking forward to our investment of $1 billion in what is now called Arkansas. We see this as an investment in our future and that future will be called New Beijing. Chinese investment will make Arkansas a great place for jobs as the People's Republic of China will succeed where the Soviets failed. As we build our roots deep in Arkansas, we are thrilled with the potential new ideas and advancement we will share with our people back home. Soon we will have the world's largest runway in the South China Sea, and we thank Arkansas for contributing to our noble cause. In closing, once we make China great again, all of you will see the glory of the revolution of Mao. And Arkansas, whatever you do, please never call the FBI.
Paul Harrell, Parody.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. I was talking a little bit earlier about how a lot of times politicians get into power, whether it's conscious or subconsciously, because they can't really create for themselves, like maybe some of their neighbors, and so they decide, well, I'm going to be part of the power structure that then governs or takes from those that do what I can't do myself. And this is just the nature of human nature, our fallen nature. Even in our own system, a Republican form of government and a republic where we go and have the democratic process play out, you're still pulling from people. And I was talking to Bobby Long about this last week. The system in itself is still naturally going to attract those who really want the power. They want to acquire the power to use it for their own benefit. So I went hunting a couple weeks ago. Got the biggest buck of my life, a 9-point buck. Really exciting time. It was right in the pre-rut. The bucks were chasing each other. It was crazy. I had two charge right at me. Then I had one, a third one. I mean, they were all within 100 yards of me. It was nuts. And then they were running and chasing after each other for like 20 minutes. And then this exhausted buck comes up, its tongue hanging out of its mouth because it had been running for 20 minutes. And I took it at 15 yards. It was awesome. Anyway, you'll remember a couple of weeks ago, we were telling you about the Arkansas Game and Fish. And I was talking about chronic wasting disease. So where I hunt is like actually right inside Baxter County along with Stone County. We were talking with State Representative Josh Miller about this. They are right in the quarantine zone, which means that you can't do anything. You can't take any meat out of those counties, any deer out of those counties, unless you take the bone out. And I actually think it's really hurt the hunting in the area because we have heard way less amount of activity in terms of shots and everything else than we've ever heard before. Because I think people just don't want to mess with it. Unless you have the means, it's a lot of work to quarter a deer, much less take the bone out before you can take the meat outside of the county. Interesting thing, the property where I hunt, there's one road that will take you into Mountain Home. But before you get to Mountain Home, you've got to cross out of Baxter County into Fulton County and then back into Baxter County. And so there was effort to make Game and Fish aware of this. There was effort. We were told, well, we're not going to do that. We're not going to put a roadblock up there. That's exactly what they did. So if you wanted to get your deer professionally processed, let's say in Mountain Home or somewhere in there, the only way to do it is to go outside of the county. Now you're technically going to get a ticket and then come back in. And the Game and Fish set up a checkpoint. And luckily, I had deboned every bit of my meat and everything was fine. I kind of felt there were state troopers there. I felt like a complete criminal, because I'm assumed guilty. They check your cooler, they check your tag. They don't really look at your tag because they didn't even know that I had the check number already on there. And it was almost like they were frustrated that I had done everything correctly. I'm just being real here. And it's kind of frustrating that, the Game and Fish essentially lied to my face, or lied to our face when we try to say, listen, we got an issue here, because if we wanted to use a processor, and luckily we just didn't take them at their word anyway, right? Which, unfortunately, that's the thing to do, is to not take them at their word. And that's very frustrating for me. And so I got to thinking about that in context. And listen, there are great people out there that are Game and Fish officers. I'm not disparaging the whole group. I know there's plenty of reasons, whatever you could tell me to defend, but I can't help but think big picture. So this is how I think. I just had one of the greatest hunts I've ever had. I was in nature. And I had hunted several times this year and come up empty, and then I finally get the deer that I want, and it is such a spiritual experience to be in the woods. It is such a time of worship for me personally, looking at this beautiful creation. And I thought to myself, what person experiences that kind of hunting and comes away thinking, I want to regulate this experience for other people? Honest question. What kind of person has that? See, I would never in a million years would I come away from what I experienced, had this amazing harvest, and think, you know what? I need to have a say in how other people enjoy God's creation and do this. Now, I'm not saying there aren't people that abuse, are not good stewards of God. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is, it just is an honest question. And I think it leads to other questions about the relationship between the government and authorities and the citizenry that lives under those laws and authorities. And we have to be mindful of the trust that the people of Arkansas are putting in us, whether you're an Arkansas Game and Fish commissioner or wildlife officer, or whether you are the governor of the state of Arkansas, whose law firm is taking money from the same communist Chinese entities that have been given Arkansas taxpayer dollars to locate here. This is a sacred trust. Whether you agree with this policy or that policy, we can all agree that that should never happen. And yet it has happened. There is proof that it's happened, and Conduit is essentially the only people that are continuing to tell you about this, because nobody else will report it. Arkansas Democrat Gazette, no. For the moment, Arkansas Business, no. Arkansas Times mentioned it a couple of times. They blurbed about it, I think, yesterday just a little bit. KATV with one article, but the KATV article doesn't ask the right questions. The KATV article asks, is the governor's son enriching himself? Not about the governor's law. It's the governor's law firm. He's still listed as owner. There are so many more questions that need to be asked of the governor personally. Nothing. We will continue to stay on this. This is why you need to support the work that we're doing here. And you can do that, by the way, at conduitforcommerce.org. Arkansas, be safe. Back tomorrow.